Okay. It's, let's start the meeting of April 2nd, 2025. Everyone is here and accounted for except Duke Wells. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Consideration of the agenda is item 4. Is there any proposed revisions, deletions, or additions or anything? Do you have none? Anyone? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe that was unanimous. Thank you. We don't have any announcements or correspondence tonight. Citizens' input on items not discussed on the agenda. We have a few minutes to speak. Is there anyone that would like to speak? No one. We'll go on to item 7, Mayor's Report. So I had a couple of great suggestions from your council president. Number 1 is if, and this isn't really a question, this is really a good discussion. If we can afford them, the suggestion is we get Dune City shirts for the Planning Commission and the 2 citizens on the Budget Committee as well, because the rest of it's the Mayor and Council. So it would be 6, 7 more shirts. So if you guys are amenable, 2 would be blue shirt night. So we pick a meeting, we all wear the blue shirts, and we get group photos. And we could probably do that for the Planning Commission as well, and we put it on the webpage. So if you guys are okay with that, we don't need to vote or anything. If you're really, just tell me, but otherwise we'll talk to Lila when she gets back about how much to do, and we can order a few more. Okay? And then finally, Lila will be returning to the community on Friday, and she'll be back to work on Monday.
Correct.
Yeah, that's all I have. Anybody have any questions before we move on? All right. So tonight is work session to discuss Chapter 91. Anyone that submitted comments to Lila, she tried to put them all in a single document. So we could have, there were some things to delete and what have you. So with that, we can jump right in. The marked up words are shown. The deletions are in red, they're all highlighted. So, nobody proposed anything on the first page. Does anybody want to discuss anything on the first page? It's really the original adoption date. The sections that each of those definitions are in, so those would obviously change. If nothing, we'll go to page 2. So, first suggestion was to delete section on fence. Not that we wouldn't have fences, because I think they are in land use in some areas, right? Depending on certain types of use have to be fenced. But this spells out all the acceptable kinds of fencing, and it may or may not be all inclusive. So,
Nuisance ordinance, I guess is my question.
that's a good point.
Right? I don't believe it should be in a nuisance ordinance. If it's going to be somewhere, it should be in a nuisance ordinance.
Right, where you pull a permit for a fence, and you can say,
well, it really doesn't, to me, the one that's in the ordinance is screened and fenced. The fence one isn't as important to me as the screened and fenced, you know, like if you have.
because it's definitions, right?
Yeah, because screened and fenced is like a junkyard, has to be screened and fenced.
Right.
Things like that.
Okay.
But
And under fence, a hedge or planting materials that form visual barrier, which is really screening, is under fence, which is not a fence
it's
at all.
not a fence.
Because you don't need a fence permit to put in a row of shrubs.
But I guess what I'm saying is I just don't believe that it should be in the nuisance ordinance. There's nothing a nuisance about a fence.
Well,
Or
I think
the definition of a fence.
just later on, it says like you have to have a fence.
Right,
If you
for certain
have-
things, right, if you have this machinery, then it should be fenced
And it
or
says
screened.
screened and fenced, not
Yeah,
just fenced.
Right,
But I think we can allow common sense to decide what a fence is.
right,
When the time comes, we
Okay.
don't need to describe a fence.
But, I mean, if a fence is required for some reason, it should be in the ordinance or the standards.
well, I think in here where it's referred, it's just the definition, that it's any of those things, so, no, that's a good
Yeah.
point, because you end up in these circular arguments, you know?
Yeah.
No, aren't we just talking about definitions here? We're not talking about how they would be used. We're just trying to have common language in the definitions.
Yep. Okay.
I guess I'm not necessarily opposed to it one way or another. I just don't believe that it should be in the nuisance is all.
Okay, well, probably we should make a pass through the whole, because you refer to things later, and then, you know, so you don't want to say, yeah, strike it, and then we get to it, and like, you know what, we need a definition of that. We gotta go back to it, so, so anyway, good discussion. Second one is inoperable vehicle. So it's basically motor vehicles that don't have current license or registration. And has been in that condition for at least 30 days, and I'm not sure why 30 is highlighted red.
It was originally 15, and I said
Oh.
it needs to be at least 30. Like 15 days is crazy.
It's too quick, right?
Yeah.
It could be somebody visiting or something.
Right, so
Or, right, your real automobile with a flat tire doesn't move for 15 days, and then somebody says that.
yeah, so I bumped it to 30, but I'm not opposed to just striking the whole thing either.
Gotcha.
I mean, what if an individual has a 1967 Ford Mustang that's a project that's sitting on the side of the house that somebody calls and complains about? I mean, it's a project, but
Yeah, so, well, again, later on,
Exactly, it's still okay, inoperable, because I think you're limited to 3 on the property, 3. So it's not a junkyard, it's a project. But when you have 17, it stops looking like projects and starts
Yeah.
looking like junk collection.
okay.
You know?
I have a question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
So how are we measuring 30 days?
That's a good question. I think the date should be stricken if it doesn't have current plates and can't be moved. Because for the police department, it's the current registration. That's what the sheriff's office will check. You know, if you say, is it stolen? You know, this car showed up, it doesn't have valid plates. They'll run it and go, it's not valid, but it's not stolen. So it's inoperable by code or by definition. That in itself is not the problem. It just fits the definition. Then it's, is it a project? Like if you park it in your garage.
So Melissa, what you're saying is we should strike the 30 days and just go with if it's an inoperable
And no longer used.
and no one's using it,
Usable for the purpose for which it's manufactured.
no matter what the days is.
In
So,
other words,
go ahead, Larry.
I just say maybe you put a period after manufactured and take out.
Right, because then we don't have to get into how many days is it sitting or when did the plates expire.
Correct. We don't, I mean, we're gonna have difficulty having someone go out and run around this entire town going, oh, that's been there, that's been there, that's been there.
Right.
And so that's gonna be difficult on our staff to have to process and deal
You
with.
have registration and they say no and it hasn't, because that's easy to verify. You can go backwards and go, and it hasn't been registered in 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something the sheriff's office or the DMV can look up if it comes to that.
Okay, this says also no current state vehicle license. Now, military, you don't have to change your license when you move to another state. You have to put registration on it, but you don't necessarily have
That
to
doesn't
change
say
your
Oregon.
license.
Right, but it doesn't say Oregon. So any state, does it have a valid plate? Because if you're in the military, you've got to keep it valid somewhere.
Right, I know that, but it just says valid state vehicle. To me, I read that as Oregon, and I'm just bringing up, the military doesn't have to do that.
Right, but it doesn't say Oregon. So if you have
So-
valid, like I have a car that still has Nevada plates because they
So it's
won't
not
change the title.
license, it's registration.
Yeah.
So that's my problem here.
Oh, mine's both. I mean, no, good point. However you want to look at that.
Change from license to registration.
Because
I think
they
that's good.
they need to have a valid
Okay.
registration, but their license could be from another state.
Right, okay. So as long as it is registered somewhere.
Well,
So,
it has to be two of the three, their license, their registration, or their vehicle license. Two of those have to get changed when they move to another state for their duty. But
But
no,
vehicle registration, vehicle license is the same thing. You can't have license plate without valid registration.
but your plate could be
Vehicle.
from another state. It just has the registration tag on it, is from the state they're in.
Exactly. So it's currently registered vehicle, any state.
That's
As
why I'm
long as
saying, but it says a valid state license, so I'm saying registration
That's fine.
is what it should be.
so
And
back what you were saying, Rich, and operable. So if they have a project car and it's, got no tires on it, or maybe it has no doors because they're restoring the doors, technically that's deemed inoperable.
Yep.
Yeah,
So how are we covering that? I mean, not everybody's going to go and put a whole registration on their car if they're working.
no,
They're going
I
to put it
agree.
as they're not going to necessarily do a non-op on it.
Melissa, it's when you get to the section, so this is the definition of what inoperable is, and I think it agrees with state law. It's later where it's how many can you have.
Okay, that's fine.
So it's not that you can't have it inoperable, and I think it was 3. It's in here somewhere later.
So we're just defining what an inoperable vehicle. We're not saying in this particular paragraph that you can't have one.
Exactly.
Should we-
It's-
Okay.
Maybe it'd be better just go through the ordinance. and
Yeah, go through the whole.
Identify the things that we agree
Yeah.
need a definition, and if we don't think it needs a definition, then we can strike it.
Yeah. I thought it was an outdoor storage, but it's somewhere where it talks about the numbers.
Yeah,
And I can't remember
I
which
thought it was
section it's in.
And junk machinery, junk vehicles. but
Yeah,
it's
where's
not
junk?
there either. That's section 4, or page 4, but I don't see it there.
Gotcha.
So are we striking out the days?
I'm fine with that,
Yeah,
because that's hard to measure.
We're basically putting a period after manufactured.
Yes, and then change the word license to registration. That's easier to understand.
Okay, that's
So you have valid state registration.
It'll have to be registered in the state.
Otherwise, it's an inoperable vehicle, can't be driven on the road. Okay, but yeah, I agree with you, Chris. We could probably skip definitions, go to the words, and then decide if we need more definitions or less definitions.
The next 3 of those 3, because they all talk about persons, I think the only one that's important is person responsible.
Yes,
And I thought the other 2 could be struck. So I just want to say that real quick, because that was,
Okay.
we can get rid of 2
understood.
of them, because I think person responsible says everything we need.
I think so.
So we're striking C and D.
Let's come back to that after we get through everything else and make sure we don't need those
Okay.
definitions before we strike. Okay, street is the definition, but I added some words because it didn't cover the whole right of way. It basically covered the strip of asphalt or where you drive, and it left the rest out, which could be interpreted as you can park or store stuff there, because we don't allow on-street parking or storage.
yeah.
So anyway, nobody revised nuisances declared. And then we get to animals.
I think we need to, okay, when we come back, but I think Vernon needs some more,
In definitions.
yes.
Yeah, those vary between entities drastically.
Yes, because the Vernon only says pest. I don't think that's correct, because some domestic animals can be pests also, depending
But
on
not
how they
vermin.
act. And they're not called vermin,
Right,
so.
okay.
I don't think if it's not applicable in the rest of this, that ought to be stricken, because
I didn't
who's
see
who's
what
gonna
it
be
was.
in control of wild animals?
Exactly, the city's not. That's the pickle we get in.
But anyway, we can go through it first.
Okay. So under animals, because the next section's animals,
Right.
may not permit an animal or bird owned or controlled by the person to be at large if the animal or bird is afflicted with communicable disease or is a dangerous animal.
Well, this is, bird is unknown to be afflicted, and I don't think that's what it means, is to be unknown. I think it was known to be afflicted.
Right?
So that's a word that needs to be changed.
Probably, and then leave it alone.
Yep.
It's known to be afflicted, right?
Mhm.
Okay, no person may permit livestock or poultry to run at large within the city. One wanted to delete, we don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Rapunzel, we don't allow cattle or, do we allow chickens? Are chickens okay, right? Chickens, urban chickens, right? You can have up to 12, I think.
14, yes.
14,
Chickens are
okay.
fine, bees are fine.
Okay,
Some livestock is fine, but livestock comes with a conditional use permit.
gotcha. So we should leave that alone, because if you could have livestock, they can't run at large. That was where I used to live.
So you
Commissioners
can,
vote
you
that
can
out.
potentially have livestock in Dune City. then.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. No person may permit any fowl or animal carcass owned by him or under his control to remain upon the public street or exposed on private property for a period of time longer than reasonably necessary to remove and dispose of.
Again, how are we going to tell who belongs to what?
Well, if it was in the street and you knew it and it had a tag, otherwise it's unknown, or if it's on your property, it's up to you to dispose of it in a reasonable amount of time.
What if it's a deer? And it's in your,
If it's on your property, you should dispose of it. I don't know what you're supposed to do with it, but.
it says here upon a public street or a place or to be exposed on private property.
It's
So
owned
if
by
it's-
him. If it's a deer, you don't own it. It's a wild animal. So it's to be like your dog got run over by a car and it's out on the road and you left it. And it was identifiable or had tags or whatever. Or the risk of being too graphic. Or the deer died in your backyard and it's starting to stink. If it's in your backyard, then deal with it.
You can't drag it to the public area.
Come on.
If it's dark,
Whatever. Okay. There are possibly creative alternatives. Okay, D was the one that we get comments about, somebody's feeding the deer, and it's, no person shall scatter or deposit any food or attractant on public or private property with the intent of attracting or feeding wild animals, including but not limited to bears, raccoons, coyotes, cougar, and deer. Does not apply to bird seed held in a receptacle, reasonably designed to avoid access by wild animals described above. So, our don't feed the deer sign doesn't read like this. It just says don't feed the deer, you can be fined $500. The deer gets singled out, but it actually says don't feed wild animals. And we really have not much of a method to enforce, right? I mean, my neighbor's got deer all the time, and I said, what do they eat? He said, bird seed. The birds scattered everywhere, and the deer eat it.
right.
So he has a bird feeder.
I have
On
a
a
neighbor
post, I
that's
mean-
got one down low enough because she knows the deer don't eat
His
it.
is up high, but he gets the seeds and grains, the mix with corn and all that, and the deer love it. And
The birds make a nest.
it's everywhere, yeah. And I do sunflower seeds, and the birds scatter them everywhere. The deer, I don't think are in love with sunflower seeds, but I get it, you know.
You can tell the areas that the deer are really getting, for lack of better terms, fed.
Right,
By
they're always hanging
people.
out in the same spot.
Because, well, not only are they hanging out in the same spot, but you look at their coats, and their coats are patchy and mangy. And when Dune City originally put out the sign stating that you couldn't feed deer, or you're gonna get fined, all of a sudden the deer started looking 150% better because people quit feeding. Well, the deer went back to eating what they're supposed to eat.
Yeah.
And now that it's kind of slacked off, and the deer and the people are back to basically feeding them. Now you start looking at them and they're mange, or they're basically mange again. So, but I don't think we should strike it. I think it needs to be corrected and stated, no feeding of wild animals, period. But,
Right.
With the exception of birds, or you include birds? People like the bird feeders.
Yeah, with the exception of bird feeders. Yeah, just leave that, but instead of putting a short list, just say wild animal, and then say does not apply to bird seed in reasonably designed receptacles. You're right, it's a short list. I also see foxes and, there's other things.
I was gonna say,
Possums.
when you make a list, you're gonna omit something.
Exactly. Possum shop. So, and we can just think about that for a minute.
want to say, I get it, but, then to be basically devil's advocate, what's the difference between, a deer, a bear, a raccoon, and, birds?
Wings.
When they're wild animals.
Wings.
When they're wild animals.
Bears gonna go wherever the bird seed is also, believe me or not. It took down a fence on it, so.
I don't know how you do that, and
I don't know how you would ban bird feeders either. That's pretty popular, right?
yeah.
I don't know if bird seed, like, is bird seed really the problem?
I don't
I
know.
don't think that's what's causing the impact on the wild animals. I think it's people baiting them with like actual substance.
Feed corn and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I believe you're right on that, yeah. I don't believe it's, well, a percentage of it's gonna be that bird seed, because that's not their normal
Right.
food source. So that's gonna increase.
Assuming you're not putting out a 50-pound bag of bird seed and just letting the animals have it.
Some people. But yeah, I mean, I just think that we need to make sure that we're not allowing people to feed wild animals is all.
And it says attracting or feeding wild animals. You can put a period right there because we say including but not limited to. That's pointless words if it says wild animals.
Yeah.
And then leave the next sentence, if we're okay with birds.
Now,
But, and it doesn't, and then it's simplified. Because we kind of narrow, our sign on the street just says deer.
yeah,
I think we should leave in the part of the last sentence that says does not apply to bird seed, and then, the leftover of that. I think we should comma after animals and take out from including to subsection.
And I'd like to remove reasonable. That's so subjective.
You're right. That are designed to avoid access by wild animals. I mean, when you buy a feeder, it says it's supposed to be squirrel-proof, whatever.
It'll say
supposed to
something
be.
on the,
That squirrels figured mine out, but.
I was gonna say squirrels can get anything.
I just add extra bird or sunflower seeds for the squirrels. I don't know what else to do. And the squirrels,
They're usually ones that throw the stuff around too and make it.
well, my cat likes the squirrels, obviously, like that.
Since we took out the including but not limited to, we need to strike out as described above also.
Yeah, the last couple words.
And just say wild animals, right? There you go.
Yeah, you're just gonna stop there.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Everybody go with that? Yep. All right. Okay, nobody commented on privies and septic on the first part. Debris, garbage, trash, nobody commented on that. Here we go, junk machines, junk vehicles, and inoperable.
Okay, but we had the time period up there. under
Exactly,
the-
that's where the 30 days appeared again. So if we said junk vehicles, inoperable, not removed. Oh, this is but not removed. This one's not how long they were not.
I'm under debris.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a 30.
Oh, you're right, you're
That was
right.
another 15 that I changed. to
Oh,
30.
gotcha, because it was too soon. Yeah, okay. Does that make sense to everybody? It said 15 days and it's too quick, it's not a reasonable turnaround time.
That sounds good.
Okay. Okay,
But the debris, the only thing, my comment was, we're not going to consider compost piles as debris and, because some people, whether it's quite a few, have compost piles.
do we spell out compost piles?
No?
We have, manure piles. We're silent on wood chips as well, because a lot of people, when they're out grinding trees, they'll say, you can dump a load here, you know, in the corner of the lot, whatever, and then it gets used as landscaping. And I'm okay, it doesn't generate smells and wild animals don't eat it.
I just didn't want anybody getting in trouble for compost piles.
Okay, I'm good.
And my question with the garbage cans,
Yep.
is that feeding the animals if you have trash cans that
Well,
animals
it
can
says
get in?
protect them from weather and animals, and don't, and the lid has to close. Doesn't say it has to lock, right?
No, it doesn't.
You
It
can
has
get the
to
fire
lock.
resistant, but, I think as long as they're closed, you comply.
Because they tip them over all the time and get into them, so.
I'm gonna say regardless if it's a bear proof or not, they're gonna get into it.
Amen. Yeah.
Or they'll
So-
take your trash can.
I think it's reasonable, right? I mean, it says overflow is defined as you can't close the lid, you keep the lid shut. I mean, that's a reasonable approach. Any other comments on B, section B?
No.
B is in boy. Okay, C is in Charlie. This is where the inoperable vehicles had to be removed within 30 days because it used to say 15, right? Okay, we have more reasonable. And then inoperable within enclosed building or screened and fenced are exempt. So that gets to your project. If it's parked on jack stands, it's behind a fence, whatever, that's fine. But when it comes to nuisance is the problem, right? It's the nuisance chapter, so.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here and suggest that a vehicle that is not inside another building, somebody could claim that they are restoring it, but if it's not behind a fence, if it's not in a building, it's not yet a project car.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, to think that you could paint a car outdoors in Oregon or do any serious body work, right, in the rain, and
Some people may try.
you know, but is that really restoring a car?
I would suggest that it's not. So I like the code the way it's written.
I agree. I think we should put some numbers in there because, and maybe it was when I was reading other people's codes, one of them was like, you're limited to 3 or whatever. Like we say in the short-term rental, you have to be able to park on site. So if you're renting 5 bedrooms and you don't have sufficient parking for your guests, that's a problem. So it's kind of the same. And I don't know how you put that in words because there are a couple examples where there's just stuff in the backyard. It's not on a slab, it's not in a driveway, it's not in the garage, it's not parked, it's just like pushed and, you know, they've got a lot of spare parts and trailers and what have you, so. And it's junk, it looks like junk.
So how about the maximum, just to add a sentence, the maximum number of inoperable vehicles is 3.
Okay, we could try that.
Is that really a good number?
I don't know. You know, if you're on a little lot in Westlake, that's too many.
I was
If
gonna
you're
say
on,
that's too many for West.
if you're on 2 acres, you know, on the other side of the lake, it's like, I got plenty of room for 3 cars, you wouldn't even know. But it's something because we do have lots that have 10 or 20.
Well, how about if we change that to the maximum number of inoperable vehicles, not enclosed or not screened is 1.
Wait, say that again, Larry, starting where?
So at the end of the paragraph, simply state the maximum number of inoperable vehicles that are not enclosed or screened is 1. That means that they can have any number of vehicles inside a barn. They can have more vehicles behind a fence that we can't see the vehicles, but the number of inoperable vehicles clogging their driveway in their front yard is 1.
I mean, those first two are already the case. You can already have as many vehicles inside
Right.
or fenced as you want.
Right.
Just didn't know where you came up with 3, that's why I'm going
Well,
with
it's somebody
3.
else's, it was one of those, you know, like Reed Newport or Lincoln City or something, and they said 3 is the number. But you're right, if you got a big lot, you could probably hide 3, and if you got a little lot, you can't even hide 1.
Right.
I don't care what they can hide. I'm worried about what they can't hide.
Exactly, if it's not screened, it's not in a garage, it's not protected, and it's inoperable and not usable.
Yeah, my concern is that if we say 30 days,
Yeah.
like you have 30 days to, you know, someone gets towed to your yard and you're trying to clear space in the garage. You got 30 days to clear some space in the garage and
Right.
then it's gotta go.
And park it.
You're not doing work in your driveway. But if they have multiple, then they're just shuffling them around
Yeah.
and they can just stay out there forever.
Yeah, because it's not the same one.
Well, I think, you know, if you consider most situations, having one vehicle that's inoperable in a driveway is really not as horrible as the person who has 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It's the junk machinery and junk vehicles not inoperable that bothers me. I don't want junk stuff out in the front to look at all the time.
You know, I have an example that's all of the above.
I don't have any problem with the one myself, so whatever the rest of the council wants to do.
Allowing one,
Yeah. For the period of 30 days.
yeah.
So,
I think that was Larry's point, correct?
Yes.
so when we're done, this is a suggestion because we've got to then publish the proposed revisions and have a public hearing. So if somebody comes in with a really good example of why that number should be 2 or 3, we can take public comment. We're obligated to take public comment, but yeah, we got to start somewhere because right now it's open-ended. And so I'm fine with, you know, if they're screened or in a garage, if they're completely screened or in a garage, it's unlimited. And if it's not, 1's a great place to start.
So I just have a kind of a comment. So that first line, it says junk machinery, junk vehicles, and inoperable vehicles that are not removed within 30 days, period.
Yeah.
That's an incomplete sentence, so we should be combining something.
What are you gonna do with them after 30 days?
Remove them, or put them in an enclosure, or put them behind a screen.
Well, how about if we add the word must after vehicles? It says junk machinery, junk vehicles, and inoperable vehicles must be removed within 30 days. Not that are not removed. It should be an actionable verb.
There you go.
Correct, thank you.
That makes more sense. And then at the end, we're gonna say unscreened or otherwise unprotected, the maximum number is 1, right? So if it's visible from the right of way, it's 1.
Right.
And
We
the
should
next-
put it in before that last sentence because we're doing the exclusion after. That's something you always end with. So between the 2 sentences, we should put, like Larry said, 1 vehicle max.
Okay, so after must be removed within 30 days, and then add, how do we say it? A single,
In excess of 1. So this whole section, these are definitions.
right,
We are defining what
it is. What
exactly.
oh, you're right, the action shouldn't be here. It is what it is, they're not, those, oh, you're right, they aren't removed. So in these cases, things that are
That's what we
sitting
need
on
to know.
30 days.
Yeah.
Because the action is in a later section, right? No, wait,
Right.
no,
This is.
this is the act, we're
This is
past the
not
definition.
definitions.
No, if you look at the previous paragraph,
Still in the.
No, this is an actionable section, so we
Oh.
should.
Definitions are only 91.02.
Yeah.
Right.
those are the definitions. I'm saying these are written as definitions. It's
Oh.
saying nuisances affected public health, not in, or safety including, but are not limited to, and we are listing what those are.
Okay,
So they are essentially definitions.
vehicles that are there for more than 30 days, right? So we're not removing them in this section, we're saying that's the definition, it's been there more than 30 days. You're right, and then the number one, or whatever that should occur in a different spot, not in the definition.
Well, you're telling them how to solve the problem.
Right.
We're just defining what the problem
And
is.
the how to solve it should be in a later section, you're right.
This isn't definitions though, we're into the nuisance.
Yeah.
No, it's not the definition section. The wording, according to this paragraph right here, we are defining
Right.
what violation.
These, what nuisances are.
Yeah, exactly.
What
Well-
it is, not how to fix it yet.
I guess I don't have a problem with defining something in an actionable section because it gives context. It's true. It is a definition, as Chris indicates, but we're trying to describe the action and the intent of the paragraph. And I like Melissa's idea about moving it up into the middle of the paragraph.
Yeah.
If we change that and we start having actions, then all of this paragraph has to be changed because they're all written as just static definitions of what a violation is.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't want to put the actions in here.
Where would you put it?
They come later.
Okay.
But
That's
but
fine.
the 30 days makes sense because it did say 15 days in that section originally, and I think 30 is.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that makes sense.
So those where we had dates, those are fine, but yeah, we gotta be careful, you're right, we're not describing what it is and how to solve it in this section, what you can and can't have.
I'm good with that. I think you make a good.
Okay, so we'll leave that, the part that says that are not removed, we'll leave that for now, we'll figure out where it falls later. Good point.
But we are gonna set a limit? Or did we decide on that?
Well, would that go here? Because it's just saying what it is. It's things that don't move for over 30 days, but they don't count if they're completely screened or.
But putting a limit isn't telling them what's going to happen to them.
So like one vehicle for more than 30 days is fine, 2 vehicles for more than 30 days is a violation, essentially. In
Okay.
their wording, but that's kind of what we're going after or no?
Probably.
And that could be both a definition and an action, actually.
So we're back to, what does that second sentence say?
But no more than
Well,
one vehicle
isn't it-
allowed for 30 days.
Yeah, you're not saying what the action of enforcement is here. You're defining what the nuisance is. The nuisance is defined as more than one inoperable vehicle.
Okay. All right, so how do we say that?
I think
Then when it come in after the word and,
Which and? Are you in the first sentence or?
junk machinery, junk vehicles, and max of one inoperable vehicle.
Well, it's all three of those.
I only want one of any of those.
Right. Whether it's a big concrete mixer, a vehicle, or a broken trailer or whatever, inoperable trailer, it's any one of those falls in that definition,
I think
and you can have one.
Larry had a good one, just more than one junk, or an operable vehicle
Okay.
that is not removed more within 30 days.
So just put more than one right up at the front?
Yeah, and then change that to an or. Junk vehicle or inoperable vehicle.
Gotcha, not an and.
Right.
So it should read more than one junk machinery, junk vehicle, or inoperable vehicle
Yep,
that are
vehicle,
not removed within 30 days.
yep.
Okay.
So you're
That
saying
describes the violation, more than one of those things,
so you're saying they can have,
one of
they
those.
can always have an inoperable vehicle out in front of.
Everybody can have one.
I don't care for that.
I don't
I
think, considering where we are, we'll never be at zero with big lots. This is where people collect junk.
I understand that. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
But they're to be within sheds or barns or something. I'm saying that you're saying that they can rotate them and always have one outside. I thought this was meant for your inoperable vehicle can only be out for 30 days before needs to be repaired or put somewhere, but it can't sit out all the time.
What do you guys think?
Well, that gets down to what was the intent.
Right, I don't think we can get to a point where there's zero, long term, because not everybody's gonna have a shed or a carport or screen.
Then they shouldn't have junk machinery.
I agree with you, I just think that,
That's my
Can we realistically get there?
In the same token, who are we to continue to tell people what they can and cannot do with their properties when that was the foundation of why Dune City was created, was to not allow the government to be able to tell you what you're doing?
No, it was the federal government that condemned the property
Yeah.
for the dunes, but, I mean, at the same time, you can deal with nuisance.
Yeah, I
We
mean-
have to define it.
Well,
Acceptable.
I'm not disagreeing with, we need some type of regulation, but let's not completely over-regulate. and
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't think we'll ever get to zero. Zero is not the number unless you live in a
But
gated.
screened
master
and
plan
fence is
community.
fine.
I'm agreeing.
Screened and
I don't,
fence.
I don't think that we can tell people that you absolutely cannot have one vehicle that's a junk vehicle that they potentially have in their mind that they're gonna work on, and they may never work on it for
Well,
20 years.
By his
but-
definition, it could be a 6-month-old Corvette that doesn't have valid plates.
Yeah,
It's not a junk vehicle, it's inoperable.
I agree, yeah.
Right? It could be a brand new anything without plates parked there. That's an in-op, right?
I think if you
Doesn't
look
have-
around, if you look around the community, it's the people who have 3 and 4 vehicles packed in like
I would love it if it was one, because some of them are at 17.
Yeah.
We haven't got the boats yet, which are probably under junk, but they'll say, no, that one works. It's like, yeah, show me. I mean, I got a deal with a couple of them that haven't been in the water, and there's more rainwater in them than lake water's ever touched them.
I think one is the compromise, it's
Yeah.
not ideal.
Right, I mean, and we may get public comment that it needs to be 2 if you're on more than a half an acre or something, but it's a place to start, because I don't think we'll ever get to zero.
I say we run with it and wait for comment.
Yeah.
Where's my comment? And I don't care for it, because where I live, I don't want anybody to
Understood.
step out front, because we have public that parks junk crap in the parking lot, and we have to call the police on them all the time, so
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Part of the deal is you built a house right on a boat launch too. So you're right in the
But it's
middle
in
of
a
public,
busy
that,
spot.
that shit happens. So,
So yeah, think of the whole community, but think of the whole community, not just, the street you live on. and-
I'm not talking about the street I live on, so.
I concur, Mayor was saying, I don't think we're ever gonna get to zero, so we need to start.
We'll post email and see where it goes. If 1,000 people show up and say the number should be 0, then great. But I think we'll also have the same number that say the number should be 4.
Well, I'm just giving my opinion, I think
No, I
that's
appreciate
okay.
it. Yes, absolutely.
I agree with you, Susan. I just think 1 is the number we should start with.
Yeah, it's a place to start. We'll get comments. Anything else on that section on C?
No.
If not, we have the stagnant water. Other than some of us suggested we just delete it. The next one's water pollution. Nobody commented on that one.
Well, go back to stagnant water.
Yeah.
Drinking is spelled incorrectly. I do believe that should be drinking source.
Is that, you believe that, it's drinking?
Maybe they like to think. I don't know.
Drinking, you're correct,
And
I think.
my other concern is sometimes the lake gets stagnant, so are we
This
making
is
sure
on
this does
private
not
property.
say,
We don't have any
this doesn't
regulatory
say on
over the
private
lake.
property in here,
But
so
Dune City has no regulatory authority for the lake.
I understand that.
So whether you state it or not, you can't go on the
But
lake.
people will complain about stagnant water on the lake, that's happened before.
Well,
Okay.
I think really the intent of this is somebody who has a cistern, an open cistern, and they're not keeping it clean and dry.
I know that's the intent, that's why I'm trying to rule out other things.
These are all underneath, no person may permit or cause, so as long as,
Yeah, no person does the lake. Well, and if you want, put on private property.
What was that? If you want to what?
If it's appropriate, you could say on private property, so there's no confusion. Whether you complain about the lake or not, it's not actionable for us.
I know it isn't.
So that's okay, it doesn't have to say that, I mean, we know, we don't.
Well, I would suggest that's a good compromise, just at the very end of the sentence after insect pests, just take out the period and put on private property, period.
Okay?
Yeah, it would, because we have plenty of little, I don't know what somebody would like to call them, but where they're almost like a ditch in front of a house that, you know, water was running through it before, but it may not be necessarily part of the property.
Yeah, it's probably in the right of way.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll put it on private property.
Because you're right, we're defining nuisances that are the residential properties,
The community properties, not the state's, the surface water of the state or anything like that. So is on private property clear enough after that period?
So what if you, cause stagnant water to form on public property?
How do you do that?
Block up a culvert, and now there's water standing there. It's not on your property, not my problem.
I think that's in the right of way section, right? You can't block up the right of way or, I mean, you can't lawfully do that. You can't block up a culvert already. It's not a nuisance, that's in the right of way. And if we don't know who did it, it's our responsibility to go clear it.
Okay.
That's in public guidance.
Cool. As long as it's covered.
So yeah, we can cover that. We don't need anybody's permission or anything. We just go fix that if we knew it. Anything else on stagnant?
No.
Okay, water pollution. And this one goes beyond private property.
Mhm. Yep.
If you're causing the pollution. So if it's so in that case, if it's left your property, like overflowing septic or something like that. Any suggestions, anybody?
Nope, it's fine with me.
Okay, odor. I think that one stands. Offensive odor, so we start getting into those things that are hard to measure. Offensive odors. I'm not in love with number 2, the second one. Because they're kind of terms of art, not science. Chemical odor, coffee roasting, sewage. I guess coffee roasting on a commercial scale can be quite odoriferous, right? When you're scorching beans and all that, but we don't have that. We don't have any businesses that do that in the city limits. So
I think 1 is sufficient.
I think so too. Because the other is sort of specifics, but it doesn't cover everything.
It's an offensive, what's an offensive odor?
It's offensive, right? Whether it's sewage or, you know, somebody says it smells like a chemical. I don't know what that really means, but.
Well, I would suggest that we strike number 2 and not number 1, but still keep the language.
But odor, yeah, I like that. That's straightforward. If it's an offensive odor. Okay. Surface drainage. Drainage without a required permit. So runoff, you know, rainwater runoff is fine. That's already covered. So this is like E. Any drainage is in G, and pollution specifically is in E, but anything leaving your site that's not rainwater could fall under that. So that's probably a safe, it may not even be permittable, you know, it says without a permit, but, you know, you can't let whatever run free unless it's clean water, not rainwater.
Yeah, I don't know what liquid waste would be, that wouldn't be water pollution.
That's what I didn't, I thought it was covered under water pollution. We were polluting, otherwise it'd be rainwater.
You want to strike it as confusing? Because yeah, it doesn't really add anything. The E is more complete.
I would say strike it.
Okay.
So striking all of G, correct?
All of G, yeah, because E covers surface and anything that gets into the groundwater, and then this one just says surface drainage, but everything that's on the surface soaks into the ground, and so
Right.
it's really covered by E. Okay. H, smoke fumes, cinders, and dust.
Well, I think the key thing here is unreasonable quantities.
No, that's the hard, what's an unreasonable, usually it's, fugitive dust is dust that leaves the work site or your yard. So if you have something, you know, you're blowing, you got the lawn blower and you make dust in your own yard, but it doesn't go anywhere, you're okay. But when it starts blowing across the street, you can't see, or it's, you know, into the neighbor's yard, it's excessive.
So we're gonna tell people that they can't have, fires to clean up their property.
Nope.
No,
It's a dense smoke.
So if it's, you're starting a fire and you've got dense smoke,
I know.
But if somebody says, well, that's noxious to me, this, here, it's another person's opinion of what offends them.
That's a trigger one, because we get the complaints, and it's like, it's burn season, it's permitted.
I'm just gonna say, because, I end up with dense smoke when I go to clean my property every spring, and I've got a permit allowing me to burn that, so, I don't necessarily agree with that dense smoke. I mean,
Yeah, and I don't like
It
things that say
states in-
unreasonable or reasonable.
it states in the permit that you're only allowed to have dense smoke for as short a time as possible while you get that flame
Gotcha.
operable
Get going.
and going, so.
I think they try to address that in the second lines, reasonableness shall take into account the purpose of the action, but that's really subjective.
It is.
Yeah. Because if you get
This whole
somebody,
section's really subjective.
somebody that's, doesn't like an individual for some reason or another, next thing you know, you got a pissing match going on.
Yep. Which, whether you have it in words or not, you still have.
You're
but-
still gonna get it, but yeah.
I like the idea of it. I'm not sure about the language because as Rich points out, I mean, it could be dense for 3 minutes and somebody is going to say, well, it was dense for 3 minutes and it's not permitted.
And there's ways to measure smoke, right? Those little opacity, you get the gray card that's like 10% opacity, and you hold it up and go, it's lighter than that, you meet. It still smells like smoke. It can be annoying to the resident, the neighbor. I mean, we get complaints that it's allergies or it gives them a headache, but it's like it's legal to burn the brush this time of year.
Well, without the paragraph, like if we struck it completely, we could have a bigger problem. So my thought is there some way to define a time period, dense smoke, noxious fumes, gas, soot, cinders, or dust in unreasonable quantities or time, time elapsed. Like we say it's okay for 2 hours. Is it?
I have no idea.
At time of fire, if you're burning.
I'm not liking if you're gonna call, amount of time, because, I smoke in my smoker, 7 days a week, and there's smoke coming from that, so, you're gonna say that, I can only smoke in my smoker for 2 hours in a day? And
No, I wouldn't suggest that at all. I was trying to put some context here. I mean, obviously you're cooking, so
It's tricky, right? Because if one neighbor says, I love this smell, and the next one says, what do we call it? That's noxious to me, right?
Yeah,
It smells like.
on the other hand, you could have somebody that's burning, noxious things all the time. That's not the good tasting barbecue that we all love. It could be something else that they're burning. So you have to find some place in the middle here.
Is this something that we just allow the council to adjudicate? If somebody files a complaint in this category,
Yep.
we will be the arbiter and say, no.
Well,
that's-
it's
that's
gonna
okay.
go, right now, it'll go to Pam.
Yeah,
And Pam would say, I drove by and it was gone. If it's a short term, right? If you're burning leaves one day or whatever it is, and somebody complains, and by the time you get there, it's over with, it's solved itself, right? Because it turns out it was a short amount of time. A few hours later, you go, it's not even happening
And
Well, you
we
could, al-
Whole thing, and it goes every afternoon. And she says, well, it's not really that dense and it's not noxious, you know. It's appeals that come to us.
I was gonna say.
So we don't
can't
regulate
arbitrate
anything,
because
right,
we
we're
don't
not the
appeal.
day-to-day
Yeah,
staff.
if it goes that far.
Appeal would
If
come
somebody
to us.
pushes it.
Right, then we would have this discussion.
Yeah, and we're the ultimate judges.
Right,
Like,
for an appeal.
yeah,
and I could also propose that you could use this sentence: dense smoke, noxious fumes, gas, soot, cinders, and dust in unreasonable quantities not associated with food cooking.
So grills and smokers are exempt.
Burn permit.
Throw a dead animal in your fire and you're okay.
Well, I mean,
You gotta get rid of that bloated thing in the backyard somehow, because the previous section required it.
Right.
I believe
As sad as
in
that
the,
sounds, that's probably a legal way to get rid of it.
in the standards somewhere, it states, that you can have a, warming fire that you're cooking over that's under 3 feet, 365 days a year, so they can't stop you from burning. And somebody's gonna use that to clear their brush in the middle of the
One stick at a
summertime.
time.
When it's not, and they're gonna bring a hot dog out. I mean, there's a loophole in it, and it happens all the time, so.
Just keep that hot dog handy if you're burning brush.
Well, I like Chris's idea that this would be arbitrated by the council, but I think you could also add, not associated with cooking.
I would agree with that.
I think so. And if your smoker gets so popular that you smoke out the whole neighborhood, we'll have to have a discussion.
and
We have to come over for a taste test to make sure it's,
Well,
You gotta call in advance or it's a sellout.
if you put it with cooking, then like Rich said, they'll burn anytime, have a hot dog or throw a dead animal in there.
It's gonna,
You gotta watch your eating.
you're gonna have to have it.
we can also, that can be appealed to us as well.
Right.
If somebody makes a complaint, says, you got a whole yard of trash burning and you're standing there with a hot dog, that's not
One hot
valid.
dog on a coat hanger.
Yeah,
Realistically, you're not gonna cook over dense smoke with noxious fumes and gas and soot and whatnot.
You wouldn't think.
don't challenge me.
Only in Boy Scout camp.
Okay, we can go with not associated with cooking is fine with
Hot
me.
dogs have carcinogens anyways.
Yeah.
Either party can appeal and we'll.
So just add one sentence at the end, not
Not associated with
associated with,
cooking.
okay. All right. Next one is harborage for vermin. Accumulation of litter, filth, garbage, decaying animals, vegetable matter which may or does offer harborage or source of food for vermin.
And the whole point of this is you're trying to keep wild animals away, not just vermin. And the vermin definition says they have to be a pest.
Well,
And
and
it
at
could
the
be-
same time, we also don't allow piles and anything that stinks, and so it's kind of
Does this not fall under debris of some sort?
debris,
That's
the
what I was
piles of
thinking.
garbage, I mean, it's kind of covered. We have the wild animal section, and then we already have the garbage section, so it's kind of
Why don't we strike?
on.
So it,
We probably could strike it because it doesn't add anything that's not already said, I don't think.
I'd say let's just get rid of that paragraph.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, I like it. There we go,
Good.
there we go. And J.
Get 'em.
Unfit for use, if it's on the Oregon Health Division's unfit for use because it's for the manufacture of illegal drugs, blah, blah, blah. That's somebody else's definition, I wouldn't touch that. Because a state organization identifies it, but I don't know that we need to recognize it separately because it's a state thing.
that's what I thought. Why are we?
It's already been tagged, right?
If it's already in law in the state, why do we have it here?
Well, it might be defined in state law, but the action of declaring it a nuisance might not be.
Oh, I gotcha. So this is so we could pile on. If the state tagged it unfit, then we could say it's now a nuisance, get it cleaned up or whatever, or fenced or something, I don't know.
You're going to want everything on your side if it's declared unfit by the state.
I don't know. We'll just leave it. It's their definition. We'll just leave it. That's easy. Next one is defined by the building code. Unsafe building.
Okay.
Next one is appliances.
I don't like the accessible to children because
I don't like it
there's
either.
older people that might fit into some of
It
these
doesn't-
things too.
I know, and it's so hard to measure. Like, we don't say like up to 8 years
You don't
old, like
want
what size.
anything that someone can get in and lock themselves in, not just children.
Yeah.
I think otherwise it's fine. Just remove the accessible to children.
Okay. No person may leave and, right?
Right.
Leave and abandon unattended, yeah, let's take that couple of words, in a place accessible to children. Let's take that part out. So it's, regardless of who it's accessible to, you shouldn't have that left out. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay, offensive littering versus the non-offensive kind of littering. I think it should just say littering.
I was gonna say, can we just remove that one?
Is that okay with everybody? Remove
Yep.
offensive?
Yep.
So we don't have to find someone offended or not offended, but it covers garbage and trash and draining anything that drains upon the land.
I thought this was already covered.
It kind of is.
When I was doing my review, under debris and
The-
water pollution.
Number 3 is the new one. It didn't have the lit tobacco product to match for other material anywhere else, I don't think. That would be like throwing a cigarette butt out or a match.
Rubbish.
Yeah, but it's on fire.
Well, that's, I guess, that's the imagination.
So perhaps can it just say something on lines of tossing that or tossing a trash like out a car window and just instead of saying just a tobacco product?
Well, the third one would be lit tobacco, but they're all discarding of anything, right? Yeah, it's really, it's a big, long list of,
Well, the drainage one, we already have the septic tank
Right.
accessible one previously.
this one
Yeah.
spells out camping vehicle, waste holding tank, or other. It's more specific, but it kind of is all covered in other places, so.
The thing that's different, if I may, on these
Yeah.
last ones, is that it's on the property of another, whereas before it was on private property.
And I think it's already against the state law in just about every single state in the nation that you can't discard or lit,
Nothing lit,
tobacco or nothing lit out a window.
and you can't throw trash away on someone else's property.
Yeah.
It's littering either way.
Well, I know it's defined by the state, but is it enforced by the state or enforced by the city?
Within the city limits, we would be the first line of attack.
Right. So are we going to enforce a state law or are we going to enforce a city code?
Okay,
Probably city code.
Right.
I see the difference between the debris and this. The debris is specifically targeting any like bulk things because it has a 30-day limit,
Yeah,
where this is anything, like literally.
exactly. Anything that you discard.
That's,
Okay.
All right, so we'll just take out the offensive. And an attractive nuisance.
What's attractive?
Things that are appealing and easily accessible to children. These are hard to define. It's one of those you'll know when you see it, in theory.
I just think it should say unguarded machinery, you know, or something like that, but that, the end of that sentence, that's just, because you don't want anybody getting hurt. The fact that they just put that it's accessible to children, but you don't want adults or teenagers or anybody else getting hurt on something either that's.
I've got a problem with, the whole thing, unguarded machinery. If I leave a piece of machinery sitting on my property, which there is one sitting there right now, and somebody trespasses on my property and goes over there and gets on that machine, they are trespassing on a piece of property that they shouldn't be on to start with. So why can't I leave a piece of equipment sitting on my property and not expect it to be just left alone?
And
Same thing with lumber, logs, firewood. If it's not put there in an offensive manner, you know, if I'm gonna have a load of logs brought in to be able to have it cut into firewood, that's my right.
in this section, and I think Chris brought it up originally, it doesn't talk about whether it's fenced or screened. If it's fenced, it should be no comment, right? You want an old circular saw that doesn't have a blade guard like the new one does, but it's behind a fence or it's in your shed, that's your business.
I don't care whether I got a fence up or not. That's
Oh,
my
well,
property.
it's properly posted, but behind a fence, there's no question, like, because I don't like that if it's easily accessible to kids or it's appealing to kids, you know, a pile of firewood that's appealing to kids is not acceptable, but an ugly pile of firewood is acceptable. That doesn't make any sense.
No, well, I don't think a pile of wood that is accessible to a kid, if it's private property,
Right.
it's private
It's
property,
already private property. No, I agree.
whether it's fenced or not.
I would propose that we strike the whole section.
I'm in concurring with that.
So if you look on the next page, it says you can't have a vehicle outside that's.
I know, it gets back to the outside inoperable vehicles and storage, and it's not worded the same as the other section.
I'm just going to point this out here. Like Richard said, it's overstretch of, government control. It says no owner or person in charge of a property. So I have to go put up a fence so I can have a row of firewood that's not going to have a person from our community go try to take something or climb on it.
No, I agree. Not to mention, we don't have, that's not gonna be enforced. Nobody's gonna, I mean, it's not like there's 24/7 private security driving around and.
Right.
We live in the forest, there's logs all over
Exactly.
the place, I can't clean well fast enough.
And chainsaws by nature don't have a guard, so.
Yeah, I can't think of a reason to keep it.
And then it's specifically, after all that about guards and machines, it doesn't apply to a construction project. So actual saws and tools are exempt in this section. So yeah, I can see
every-
the whole section.
Every person in the state of Oregon that's been a logger uses a chainsaw for construction. Or uses, I mean, yeah, I say we strike the whole thing.
I think the whole section should be removed.
I'm fine. All right, next one is vegetation and vision obstructions. And it says, for this section, for purposes of this section, the property includes any portion of right-of-way adjacent to the property.
The person's not responsible for the right of way.
I know. That's odd wording, right? Because the city's required to maintain the right of way and the property owner is adjacent.
I mean, most people in Dune City take care of the right of way if they're taking care of the property anyway, but
Yeah.
I don't think we should require that.
Well, I think maybe you should just drop the paragraph. For purposes of this section, property includes any portion of the right of way adjacent to the property. Just take that last sentence off the header.
Because then it's talking about your property, not adjacent.
Right.
Well, it does say adjacent property in B, but it doesn't say the right of way. I'm okay with that. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna ask a question, even if we strike that section, and so if someone has excess of, a half of an acre, and we all know how Scotch broom is, how are we gonna, this isn't asking them to make sure that they have it cut down every single location of their property, correct?
Well, we're not striking the whole section. We're just striking that one paragraph that talks about the right of way.
I understand that, Larry, but my question is here we're putting it in greater than 8 inches in height or taller or a fire hazard. So are we telling them that on all of their entire property that they have to keep that cut down?
Yes.
What are we going to do about our seniors in our community that don't have the ability to do that, nor the finances to do that?
Well, keep reading. It says,
Hard to get rid of.
Melissa, it says, city has discretion not to enforce this section based on the totality of the circumstances, including the type and location, and if it is left in a natural state.
That's what I was gonna say, some people leave part of their property.
Yeah, there's a lot of wiggle room in there. Yeah, I have both, I have a lawn and then I have a bunch of old shrubs and some wild rhododendrons and
Well, I think if we identified a problem where somebody could mitigate their Scotch broom, Scotch broom has a tendency to pervasively spread.
Correct.
So it would be in the community interest to help that person mitigate it so that it doesn't become my problem, your problem, and everybody else's problem. It's better to nip it in the bud when you have a chance.
So what is our goal? What is our plan for that is currently in existence?
on private property,
Yes.
I don't think we have a plan.
We're asking to enforce it and telling our citizens that it has to be enforced, but how are we going to help them rid of it for the community effort?
Well, it says we have the discretion to not enforce it. I mean, I don't like paragraphs like that. It says you have it, you gotta keep it mowed, unless we decide you don't have to keep it mowed.
Mm-hmm.
My husband doesn't like the Scotch broom, and the neighbor has it, and he goes over and helps him because he's not physically able to do it all. So my husband goes over each season and cuts it down so it doesn't get in our yard.
There are community groups that go out and cut down Scotch broom every year.
Yeah.
But I think the appropriate approach is if you saw an issue with Scotch broom, you'd alert the property owner, and it's during that process of discovery that you would learn of their difficulty, and then you could marshal resources. You're not going to find those people. You're going to find ways to help them.
Yeah, and this section covers a lot of material. The first is about fire hazard. B is about trees and tree limbs that present a safety hazard to the public or adjacent property. So if your tree is dead or dying and leaning, it's your responsibility. The next one doesn't make any sense. If it projects over a sidewalk at less than 8 feet above the sidewalk or a street at less than 13 feet above sea level.
We have streets that are above 13 feet above sea level.
My house is 60 feet above sea level, so.
I crossed that one. That's crazy.
Yeah, get rid of C.
We don't have a sidewalk.
It doesn't even make sense, yeah. And I think when we're doing the tree limbs, we're going out like 15 feet because RVs and the UPS truck are like 13. I think it's 13 above the street because that's basically your big RVs and your delivery trucks, but yeah, we could just strike it. It's worded weird. We don't have any sidewalk. Public sidewalk, right? Mm-hmm. I think we do anyway, right? Yeah, that came from somewhere else. And then D, we don't have hardly any curb.
Or from the center of the street. So you're saying that you can't have anything over 36 inches?
So I just said exceeding 36 inches
That's obstruction
from
of
street
vision.
center line.
And
From what?
Like from,
Ground,
going up
ground.
the sign and
it's,
you can't see down the
this is
road.
in the wrong spot. It's a sight triangle is what they're trying to describe. And that's
Correct.
a traffic engineering thing.
Right.
It's eye height looking left to see how far you can see and
that's a terrible definition. Like, if you have a curve, measure up from the curve 36 inches, but they don't tell you which way you're looking and how far you have to be able to see. You could leave the last sentence, vegetation, walls, fences that obstruct vision constitute a safety hazard. We have that all over the place.
Would obstruct vision from what?
No, that's a good point, because we need to say at intersections.
Right. If I'm trying to obstruct the vision into my living room,
Right.
I would like to.
That's okay.
Exactly.
Or screen your inoperable vehicle.
Right.
I like it. Yeah, I like it too. So I can't see it, but, so do we strike that or do we reword it? But
I think it needs to be reworded because again, if people already have some type of fence in play that's been, there for years.
Well, and if we're talking about intersections, Rapunzel, correct me if I'm wrong, new development, the intersection, you gotta get a driveway permit. This is reviewed with the driveway permit, the side triangle.
This is true, and the development code does have a definition and sort of a diagram.
Right, it actually has a side triangle.
Vision clearance
Yeah.
for driveways and intersections.
Right. So this, I think, was trying to help, but it doesn't make a lick of sense without that context. So I think we're fine, it's covered because we issue driveway permits and it gets reviewed. I don't think that's helpful there, because this isn't where we issue fence permits or driveway permits at all. It exists in the section for D.
So just delete it.
Probably. I mean, I like B. And A, if we want to talk about the brush that's a fire hazard and the goal is to remove it, that's great, but the way it's worded is weird, that we may or may not enforce it.
Yeah, and there is vegetation on older properties that are maybe sight down the street at an intersection where you can't see. This doesn't say it well enough to
Right.
cover
Right. And if it's growing into the right of way, we trim it back. Well, when we have a problem, you can't see it. I mean, we've got guys working right now that are going out and trimming limbs and mowing the shoulders under contract this year. And so if it's in the right of way, yeah,
it. I made a whole list for the city
We-
year after year
Yeah.
of places that you can't see.
So we finally got somebody under contract. And we will run out of money before we get to it all, but we'll put it in the budget again for next year.
Strike D then?
I think so.
Striking D as in dog.
D is in dog, yeah. And does somebody want to take a whack at A to change that? Or is this a case by case and we don't put it in the nuisance ordinance?
I think it's very subjective.
I mean, if Scotch broom shows up and is spreading, you didn't cause the nuisance. But I'm with Larry, like, what do we do to get rid of it? Not, oh, here's your ticket.
I'm here to tell you that it's like,
Because of plant broom.
you're sitting there watching spring go, and Scotch broom
Stuff
goes
starts routing
from
up.
6 inches to 3 feet overnight, basically. And next thing, you don't even know it's Scotch broom till it's got yellow on it. I mean, some people wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think the 8-inch thing doesn't make any sense. When it's 8 inches high, you still get the yellow bloom on it.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff's, it's tough. We gotta control it, there's no doubt about that. 'Cause
What do you have
it's
to do,
bad
pull
stuff.
it? Or can
The
you
best thing to do
poison
is
it?
pull it, yeah. Because otherwise, if you're just cutting it, you still got the stalk
Just
growing
back.
year after year after
Pull
year.
it before it blooms.
But you
Or
know-
just as it blooms, you gotta get rid of it before it starts
You,
spreading.
you don't burn it either, because it puts off a toxic fume that will actually make you sick, deathly sick.
All right.
Following things, conditions on any property are a nuisance. Grasses, thistle, cockleberry. Grasses, I mean, everybody's got grass, or I would hope they do,
Higher than 8 inches.
higher than 8 inches. Now, wild,
I have some. This time of year, grows fast.
A lot of properties are gonna have that because they don't maintain them.
I think the sentence, the totality of the circumstances gives us a wide leeway there.
Yeah. All right, you wanna leave it, because it'll be a case by case?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, it's been here a while, and we don't get a bunch of appeals to council over this, so limited resources to go out measuring grass and. Plus your cockleburrs as well, but, we can leave it. Leave
So
it in.
we're gonna keep A, B, but delete C and keep D, is that right?
No, we struck D as well, because the.
Okay,
the final
fine.
stuff is elsewhere.
So we're gonna keep A and B and that's it.
Yeah. Yes, alpha and beta stay.
Sounds good.
Is that good? All right, now we're on to rubbish, composting, and burning. Which seems repetitive.
I was gonna say, same as in debris.
Yeah, it's like 3 of us agreed to delete this entire section.
So, is it red because so many people wanted to delete? It's not new material, right?
No, I think it was already there.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's covered other places and to some extent regulated by other people, like what you can burn, that's the fire marshal, not the city.
Let's just move on. Delete
Okay.
and move.
Delete it?
Deleting all of 91.08, correct?
Yes, I think so. No electric fences, no barbed wire fences.
Okay, here, can I do a,
Which one you want? You want A?
yeah,
Okay?
it says at least 6 feet, should be feet.
Picky.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, probably. And if it's maintained by a government entity, it's exempt. No person may install, maintain, operate electric fence along a street or the adjoining property line of another person. Is everybody okay with C? Good repair, missing or loose, sagging, leaning, or otherwise not in good repair. Got a lot of wiggle room, but
Why are we telling people that they can't have a barbed wire fence along a public right of way? If they are authorized to have chickens or goats or things of that.
you can have a wire fence, not a barbed wire fence.
I think it's actually that safety, that's like, I agree with it, but the intent is you're putting it out there and it could be dangerous to the
Children.
civilians and children who are
Yeah.
trying to scale your fence.
It's common, a lot of places, it's not allowed unless it's like industrial or a junkyard or something. You can't have barbed wire on residential, but you can have wire fence for chickens or
Then again, it's private
stock
property.
fence. Not where it meets public right of way,
Sure.
so it's shared, so the public is accessible to the other side.
This is me, this is you.
That's not public right of way.
This is public right of way, this is private.
Oh, okay.
So if I got my fence right here,
And if I get nicked by your barbed wire, is your homeowner's insurance covered?
you trespass on
Nope.
private property.
Not if it's on public property. It's all-
It's not on,
Well, it's usually right at the property line. It's presumed to be right at the property line.
yeah.
So I can touch the fence without
If
trespassing.
you, if you touch the fence, you're trespassing.
Not if it's right on the property. No,
I just kind of disagree with that to a point, right?
I don't know. Most communities don't allow barbed wire unless it's like industrial zoning or something like that. Do you know of some? I mean, is it a problem?
Not right off the top of my head,
Okay.
I'm just,
I haven't really paid much attention because I don't climb over other people's fences.
I don't either, but, I just think that some of this stuff is.
Yeah, we
somewhat
from
overstepping.
somewhere else and it's everything, you
Yeah.
know, even stuff that doesn't normally occur. you're right, it can be a bit.
Yeah, I'm fine with leaving it,
Okay.
I don't care.
So any other words in fences?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, now we got surface water and drainage, and
That's kind of covered back here in this other section.
a lot of it is, yeah. We had two suggest we could delete the whole section. And stormwater pollution and all that is covered in other places, and it's also state law. And so if we're not word for word identical to what state law says, restating it is a slippery slope.
I'd say just get rid of it.
I agree.
Okay, everybody okay with that? Shorten it? Okay, doesn't make it legal because it's covered in other places. Say again, Melissa?
Striking 91.10 altogether?
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Fine with me, because we just met with the water master, so I would not want to do anything against the state law.
Yeah. Well, and it covers stuff that we don't have here, like detention ponds and stormwater detention or retention not acquired by the city. That doesn't even exist here. This is from somewhere else. We got a lot of words in there that don't really apply. It was just a copy paste. Graffiti.
This one's not enforceable.
I'd get rid of it.
I get rid of it too.
Okay? I'm fine with that. Notices and advertisement. Rapunzel, we have signs covered, we have sign code, right? They talk about,
Signage is a section in the zoning and development code.
okay, because we had this question come up with short-term rentals. Somebody said, shouldn't have any signs, and it's like, we already allow a sign on any lot up to a certain size, and
Correct.
temporary for like for sale or yard sale.
Correct.
So probably we've got a lot of words in here, and the sign ordinance is elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So one wanted to delete, but knowing that signs are regulated elsewhere. Does anybody else want to delete?
I'd say we covered it elsewhere.
I think it covered under littering too.
And littering is exactly, like scattering handbills, that's already littering. Signage is covered in the sign code. How many, how big, all that. Okay.
I just have one question, though. I mean, I know signs is covered in many different places. Where would we be able to enforce the for sale notification signs? Or,
That's in the sign code. If you're allowed a permanent, like one sign in front of your house, like your name, your address, or whatever you want to call it, something like that. And then temporary, like a for sale sign is a separate thing, like a sign in a car or for sale by owner. That's in the sign ordinance. Is that what you mean?
well, my biggest concern I see a lot of on the corner, I know in some areas it's county, some areas it's Dune City. We have many realtor signs or signs that aren't taken down.
Corners.
Right, the little stab signs.
Saying their services.
Right, so that's not on private property. I don't think those are permitted. I don't think they're legal. I know they're at the corner of Clear Lake and 101, and they're in the states right away.
Yeah.
And there's some here at Pacific and 101, and they're in the states. They're outside city limits, but I know they didn't get a sign permit because the state will not permit that.
Well, and the property, it wasn't picked up after the property was sold. So that's sitting
They
down
sit
there.
out there.
Yes.
Yeah, so Melissa, those could already be picked up. The ones you're seeing, I don't even think they're within Dune City, but if they ended up in the dumpster, it'd probably be okay because I know the state won't permit them. We asked about our sign, the city sign. Cities are exempt because we don't have to get a state permit. Anything else is a big, long process to get a sign permit, put in state right of ways. I know those little stab signs are not permitted.
I know of signs that are been put up that are not even permitted. The state hasn't done anything about it because I had a big long ordeal, big lawsuit over my sign.
Really?
I'm still pissed off because it's a whole different story.
Yeah, so Melissa, I think the stab signs could be, you know, like, they're not permitted and they could be taken down.
They're just very unattractive, and I don't
Yeah.
want someone have to go head to head with, say, a realtor over removing their signs.
You're picking up litter.
We've done it before. You know, you just call the number on there and say, hey, if that sign's not gone today, it's going in the dumpster because it can't be there. And, you know, if it costs them $20 to print the sign, usually they come pick them up and move them, you know, move them someplace else, so. But yeah, I think that's covered, it's in the sign ordinance.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's covered.
Yeah, and if it's a realtor, if it's not a realtor, if it's a political during an election cycle, those are exempt. You can't require a sign permit if they're visible and they're not an obstruction. So those are exempt as well. You get to put them up during the election, they gotta come down within like 5 days of the election.
Exactly, I was just gonna say.
And that's a problem sometimes too, especially if you don't win. They're like, I give up, and they just abandon them in place, but, so yeah, we probably don't need to have signs specifically as a nuisance separately. Okay,
So with that said, we're striking out 9112.
I think so. So we're at buildings and structures.
So, an improper maintained building or structure is a nuisance. Who's gonna define an improper maintained building? Because,
Well, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4. Missing siding, missing roofing, a temporary tarp or plywood for 30 days or more, missing windows, missing doors, or screens that are not properly attached, do not close.
We had one for years here in Westlake that the ground is taking over and no one's done anything, and it's dangerous for children play under it and everything.
Yeah, we got one house over there, it's a leaner, right? It's looks like it's gonna fall in one of these days.
Yeah, it's gonna collapse on itself.
I think you should have this.
I think so too. It's a bit subjective, but yeah, if you have multiple elements,
Well, and I think you can look at the key word there, obviously dilapidated state.
yeah.
So I think we're not looking for an arbitrary, oh, your place is dilapidated. It's a consensus that nobody can deny it's terrible, you know.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you have no enforcement over a building that's dilapidated.
Other than getting Oregon Health to say we condemned it because the water or the septic, something like that doesn't work, and they put
Yeah,
it back.
Condemn doesn't really get it removed.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna be devil's advocate on a couple of these. If they have a broken or damaged window or something, that's not, you're not gonna condemn the building. Window broke, they have to get around fixing it, you know, there's no time frame on this that it's to get it fixed.
The first one's 30 days, but you can put that on all of them, or pick a number, right? 30 days, 60 days. It took longer than that for me to order 2 windows. It took
Right,
3
and
months, but-
you know, peeling paint takes a long time to get a painter out and do things too. I mean, that's very, I think, a little too subjective.
Well, it's up to us to decide how strict we are, right? Nobody's been cited, and if they don't like it, they're gonna appeal to council. This has existed and it hasn't really been a problem. I mean, I'm with Larry, you need something that describes it, how
Yeah, I'm just saying 3
serious
and
we are
4,
about it.
I disagree with.
if
I'm okay for a dilapidated building, but I think they're getting a little too far into the weeds.
we just say an individual goes in and basically puts plywood over 5 of the 7 windows that they have. And then they allow vegetation to grow and allow their property to become somewhat dilapidated in the purpose of not having to pay the high property taxes that the state is requiring people to pay.
They won't reappraise it lower at that point. It won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd have to remove it and say it's just vacant land. I mean, you can do, what do they call it, an appeal and say it's a pile of junk, and then go, okay, that's a different problem, but I don't know that they would ever lower the tax. They'll look at comparables in the neighborhood too.
This is a particular problem in other communities around us. There's plenty of examples of this in Florence.
Oh, yeah. And if it's damaged and you had to put a piece of wood over it because there's a broken window, it's easy enough to identify and say, the window was broken on this day, I ordered a window. I mean, if you can prove you called Florence Glass, and, you know, it took me 3 months to get 2 windows, but it was easy enough to prove. I still had a window, I had an old window.
But I think 3 and 4 are covered in everything. I think those are just a little
Okay,
bit too.
and 4 is, yeah, 4 is almost like at the top, you know, the first couple. So it could be shortened. I think, I'm not sure why 3 and 4 are red.
I think those were gonna be struck.
Oh, just delete those sections, not the whole thing.
Yeah.
I got you. That makes sense, 3 and 4, because they're a little in the weeds.
I think that's a good idea. Delete 3 and 4 or move on.
And leave it, yeah, all
Because the
right.
other ones, you know, that's the point where they are a nuisance, not someone
Alright.
trying to fix their house.
All right, garage sales. Is this really a problem for us?
No, I say delete the section.
I mean, don't
I
we
agree.
have garage sales?
Yeah, it's 4 per calendar year or 48 hours or a nuisance. It's pretty specific. This came from somewhere else. I don't know that we really have a
Right.
garage issue.
Just delete it.
Say again, Larry?
Delete it.
Delete it? All right, I'm good.
The whole 91.14?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dangerous excavations. As opposed to safe excavations.
Well, in the first place, somebody who's excavating, a contractor or a private owner, if they had a dangerous hole, they're the ones that are liable for that. Why would we?
And it just says have a suitable barrier. That's normal. The first
Yeah.
section, we talked about tools and guards, it said doesn't cover construction sites. But, I mean, OSHA would say the same thing. You couldn't have an employee adjacent if it wasn't fenced or guarded or, you know,
That's
sloped
right
back.
next to it was OSHA.
So, but OSHA doesn't cover residents and kids, right? Because you're not employed there. But it just says a suitable barrier, that's fine. That's a typical requirement, so that's probably fine.
And some residents will just go through them anyway to see what you're doing because they're nosy and will fall into
Yeah.
the hole. We had that happen 3 times during our construction.
Yeah, oh yeah. All right, and then we have outdoor storage. So we're back into machines, equipment, parts, supplies. But if they're presented neat and orderly and screened, there's a lot of words in there for outdoor storage.
I was on the strike this camp on this one,
What about me?
trying to police how people organize their yards.
Yeah. You want to keep delete? You guys good with delete online?
Yep.
Okay. All right, nuisances affecting the public peace. So this is where we got into the noise. So it looks like we had a number of suggestions. Because we have 2 different ors.
I have a question here. We can't really govern sound from motorcraft on the lake or ATVs on the dunes, right?
Correct.
Okay. So this would be just noise that's private property to private property, correct?
Yes. Within the Dune city limits, yes.
Right. Okay.
And then I put the middle or, the measurable, and the hours and the dB are just a suggestion. I read a number of ordinances. A is the quiet hours, 10 to 7. 50 is pretty quiet. I've also seen that in communities where it's 60. 60 is a little louder. It gets you away from that if it's audible, on the other side of the wall, or you can hear it at the property line, because it depends on who's listening versus a measurable. You can even get a phone out now with a sound pressure reading on your phone app. Or we just buy a single gauge if it comes up for code enforcement, but 50 is fairly quiet. 50 or 60 are the common. 80 is typical because it's noisy, but you're not required to have hearing protection. So if somebody's working, and then construction and limited hours up to 90. So that would be UTVs or sandrails if you're tuning in your front yard, not driving in in the city limits. But we hear about that every once in a while. Somebody hears the sound, but during daylight hours, it can be louder.
What if you have I guess that doesn't apply because it's on the lake. I was gonna say a boat that is, so we had one year before last, he was just testing his boat. He was a race boat.
Zooming back and forth for a minute.
Yeah, he flew out through there and then they drag him back and then he'd do some work and he'd fly back out through there, Did it a couple times. It's not like he's doing it on a regular basis.
Yep. And it's, right, we don't regulate the lake. And the other is the 90. I'm not sure what the limit is for a production automobile. Because you could potentially have a street legal automobile driving down the street that could be 90 decibel.
90
intermittent.
is real loud.
It's pretty loud, but
Yeah,
Well, the other thing.
90 is what the ATV is on the dunes.
Right.
It's 97 dBs, I think it's actually.
97 is a lot louder than 90.
Yeah.
So I don't
believe
know.
it's 97 if I remember correctly.
Like a Lamborghini or something like that. I don't know if they can exceed 90. I'm not sure, because some of them are pretty noisy.
I know, the dunes used to be 90 and then they increased it to 97 about a year and a half ago.
I put a bigger muffler on my off-road car just because I don't want to annoy anybody.
So what are you proposing, Mayor, about these oars? Are you proposing one section or all of the sections?
I hadn't seen, so it looks like 3 of us or a couple of us submitted something. So that's why I said, I submitted the middle one, which is a measurable. That's where I would like to get to. And then the next one is similar, talks about the hours, and it's 55 dB. So that's why I bring it up. I don't care whether it's 50, 55, I just want a measurable. So if we have a complaint and someone goes out to measure, it's not, is it audible or is it obnoxious? It's a number, right? You can measure it and say they didn't exceed or they did.
So go ahead, Larry, and then I'll ask a question.
I would like the section that you submitted, Mayor, the one that's right after the first or.
Yeah.
It's very simple and elegant, and we don't have to talk about all the different ways you can make noise.
Right. I did a bit of research, and I was involved in this in the past. So we had quiet hours, 10 to 7 were quiet hours. What we call daytime hours were 7 to 10, and then construction was 7 to 6. So at dinner time, it got quieter, but it wasn't quiet time.
My question about your C though, you have auto tuning. People coming home after work are going to do it in the summer after 6 o'clock.
Not in Dune City. Or pick a new number then.
I think the number should change because it's light later and people work on their cars later.
Understood.
I have a question. Are we thinking about generators? What's the dB on a generator?
It's probably closer to the 80. right up next to it, so it wouldn't be 80 at the property line. So yeah, well, and I think somewhere else, it doesn't cover, where did we have this? I thought there was something in here that said,
One of them had exceptions.
yeah, there were exceptions,
Okay.
like,
just wanna
like
make sure.
emergency vehicles, power outages, that sort of thing.
So
Maybe.
I agree. I'd like to do yours, Mayor, but I do agree with Susan and, people coming home after work and wanting to work on their, their vehicle until, they can no longer see because of light. Maybe
Yeah.
extend the C portion to be, later in the evening.
Well, if you want to be, as Larry put it, even simpler, you could say, strike B and make C 7 to 10. So we got quiet hours and we got noisy hours. And it's frankly, I mean, in the summer it's light until 9:40, so 10
Right.
is not crazy.
And you could then strike the for construction, landscape, whatever, because you have the quiet hours and you have your other hours. It's
That
just
would be the
hours.
most simplest.
Well, I do know there's some concern around the city about the incessant leaf blowers.
Yeah, leaf blowers.
People are wanting to find a quieter time absent leaf blowers. So if you're having leaf blowers till 10 o'clock at night, that never really gives you that quiet time. By the way,
It is, and I agree. And I think the auto tuning is a very intermittent thing. But the leaf blowers are good. That's like every week.
Right, but I just know during the summer, people are gonna come home and work on their stuff because it's light out.
Well, you can, I don't know, I would hate to hear that stuff, I'm with you, I'd hate to hear all that after 6 PM. So that was what we called work hours, right? So contractors and that sort of thing.
For construction, it's fine. Auto tuning, I don't think should be there because people come home and work on their cars, or people that are building things will come home and build.
how about if we keep section 2 but drop the word auto tuning and just leave construction landscaping in there, because it's the construction and landscaping that people find particularly annoying. No one's going to bother somebody tuning his car.
Yeah, but you're still gonna have people that have to, after work, they're gonna come home and do their yard. I mean, go figure.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe they've got something planned for the weekend. They're gonna work until 8, 9 o'clock at night, as long as there's light, to clean their yard.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is all of the different commercial landscapers.
Exactly, I was gonna say, are you okay with contractors working until 9 o'clock at night?
No.
No, but I think private citizens should be able to work in their yard or.
So how about if we changed, if that would be the middle section C, 90 dB between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. By construction or landscaping companies, and then that gives private citizens the leeway to do whatever they want until 10 o'clock.
The other is, it's measured at the property line, so not all landscaping equipment exceeds 80 decibels either.
Right. Or even
Right.
90.
So if it's noisy, we limit the hours, but there's plenty of auto tuning and lawnmowers that at the property line wouldn't exceed 80.
Well, I know that the peace and tranquility on the lake is disturbed when you have people leaf blowing late into the evening or 2 early.
Lake, yeah.
And it just seems like because of the way the topography is at the lake, you share in everybody else's noise by echoing or what have you.
Right, travels really well.
Yeah, it travels well. It may not be over these numbers, the 50, the 80, and the 90, but it would be nice to have less commercial activity or less construction activity, after 6 o'clock. But I can understand what Susan is suggesting and what Melissa's suggesting, that people should be able to come home and work in their yards. But that's not the whole city. That's just,
So we just leave 90 dB between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. for construction and landscaping companies.
Okay.
Right.
So basically, that just cuts out the construction end of it at 6 PM.
Yeah, no commercial construction or
No
landscaping.
commercial construction.
All right, so the 3 ORs, the first section is, I think, what we have already, which I didn't like because it's got engines loaded or unloaded out of repair, that it's grating, grinding, rattling. That's an impossible measurement. Mechanical devices with compressed air, steam, or otherwise. I mean, we don't have any mines or, this was copied and pasted from somewhere else. And then it's normal hearing at 100 yards. So I think we could strike the first one because that's the old one. That's basically impossible to measure. And then the other two are too similar. I submitted the first, and the second one is similar. It's quiet, it's 10 to 7, and it's 55 dB. Slightly louder than my 50. I'm good with either number because I've seen them between 50 and 60. So pick a number.
I'd say the middle one is the one.
But then the middle one, I also have construction hours, and the third one only describes the quiet hours. It's silent on the rest of the time. So your call.
Well, didn't you just suggest that we go with the middle one there and just say between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. for construction and landscaping companies?
Companies. I like that. So you like the middle? Everybody good? The middle one?
Yeah, I'm all in format of the middle one, but are we keeping B or did we strike that out?
No, we left it.
We'll keep it, but we'll remove the auto tuning, and your own work can go later. So you can go to the 10 p.m. We're making it a little more flexible. So we only limit the work hours to landscaping companies and contractors. The 90.
Okay.
So hopefully that's a good compromise, because not every homeowner is tuning a car or working on that. I mean, it'll be isolated cases.
So basically, we're limiting construction from 7 AM to 6 PM.
Yeah. So unless it's permitted, I mean, every once in a while I get something that has to be night work. Usually that's like state right-of-way stuff outside the state limits. But yeah, if it's can only be permitted, it's night work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's daytime hours. Yeah. Tell them to go home.
There was mention of some exceptions, like I think in like severe weather, power outage, generators being allowed.
Right, same chainsaw, tools, whatever, during emergencies.
Cleaning up.
Yeah. And was that, I thought that was spelled out somewhere.
Yeah, I thought I saw it somewhere.
If we don't have it, this is the place to put it.
We only got 2 pages left, so,
I don't see it.
I don't either, and I know I read something like that, like.
Yeah, it was like emergency vehicles,
Yeah,
storm
or
cleanup.
disaster declaration, storm cleanup, emergencies, whatever, right, because fire trucks and all that, they're always exempt from all the noise, right, and sirens and all that, and then, yeah, the power company or a residence out, they got a tree fell, and they're cutting and they can't get in or out or whatever, it's hours away, if you have to run a generator for a power outage.
So what if we put in here, D, except during, extreme circumstances of power outages, storms, storm cleanup, things of that nature that mitigate the.
I think it had something in
Disaster
there
response.
like health and safety, basically. Like health and safety trumped everything. So if you have to fire up a chainsaw to clear your driveway, do it.
Yeah. Or you get a run generator
I like
to operate your water and sewer and things of
Yeah,
that nature.
sanitation reason.
How about this? Except during storm cleanup, power outage, disaster response, or any other emergency response.
Perfect.
I'm for that.
Good deal.
Somebody file a complaint against that.
It happens. Okay.
Then are we omitting A, 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Yes.
And then are we keeping the B?
So we have, no. So the whole first down to the first or
Okay.
is what we have right now. That was the impossible to measure. The middle one with D, we now have some measurements and some times and an exception, which covers everything that's, I think, in the third or.
Yeah.
Except it got really specific about
I was gonna say, it got
amplification
too
and
wordy.
radios and
Okay.
drums or other musical instruments. We're just saying there's noise. If it's loud, it doesn't matter what it is, if it's louder than this during these hours, it's too loud.
Okay.
Just,
Does everybody go with that?
Just simplify it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's easier to measure, right? We don't care if it's a clarinet or a trombone, if it's over 90 dB.
Or a rooster.
Or a rooster, or a burro. So that section keeps going to the next one. So that would all go away, right? You said
All gone.
Okay, and then a lot of this is repeated as a chronic, so, which has some definitions, and this is a problem, right? Where it's like, if it's a one-time thing, you get a warning, but when you keep coming back to the same thing, like we've had this conversation, and you know, it keeps happening, so, and the bottom one.
So are we supposed to be putting action into, so this is not including an action, right? The chronic,
It's describing what it is. It means that it's this. And then the red stuff, what does it say? 3 people? 3 counselors wanted to delete this because it gets into some things that are not like property code.
Right.
Like this disorderly conduct, providing alcohol to a minor. This is all state law stuff that Dune City, we don't have police officers. We don't have sworn officers. So it's Oregon revised statute. We don't enforce that. You know,
Yeah,
endangering a minor, these are all for the sheriff's office.
So
not for,
basically, B and C would all be
could all
stricken.
go, right, because they're not for us to act on.
Yeah.
Let's just go with A.
Pretty
A,
legit.
exactly. A is property, it's basically property nuisance. Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me too. There's a lot of words for stuff that we don't touch.
I would say that we could add one more sentence, and that would be, if you're doing this stuff and you're a nuisance to the city council, because we don't want to have to talk to you about this.
oh, if it was only that easy.
Write it down.
I think you would have a lot of public comment on that, Larry.
Give me a break, Larry.
Well, okay, so we got through the whole thing. Wow, it's 8. It's 5 to 8. Any other comments on that? I think we got a lot of good comments. We got a recording. I got some notes. Good luck to staff.
Am I allowed to speak? I'm sorry I came in a little late. I thought my husband was coming.
Sure.
I didn't get back from town in time. So I just wanted to comment on what, you want me to wait a minute?
Well, no, I have a question. Are you commenting on chapter 91 or something else?
I really was just commenting on when you were talking about the animal issues, and that I was concerned, as was your neighbor. You were talking about your neighbor, that's all the deer, that's a cousin of mine. I was over talking to him, and we were all noticing there's a real lack of deer all of a sudden, especially male deers. Now, I'm not a hunter. Do they lose their antlers this time of year? But we're not seeing deer at all of a sudden. So we was wondering
Usually
if something
lose them in
was
the
going
fall.
on.
There's a lot of cougar around nowadays too.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Having Westlake, we have a bobcat too that's been seen on Hemlock Street. I've seen cougars. So I'm aware of that, but why all of a sudden?
They're all in my yard.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Well,
move
they
around.
used to
I've
be
been
in
lately,
my
I've seen a whole
yard.
bunch of them clear. Right.
And we're
Was-
just, every
Somebody
morning.
just planted some new bushes in the front yard.
Yeah, every morning.
And they'll eat
And
them.
we're love them. Yeah. Well, I live on Hemlock Street here, just a block from this building, and we have a ton of deer. So does Geneva usually. We're just not seeing them. And Rex was commenting on what has happened to all the deer. And, well, you live there,
He
you're
used to have
safe.
5 of them sleeping in his yard every day. I noticed that. I'd never see him sleeping, but I still see him wandering around all the
I
time.
used to go over there and he had 20 deer in his yard.
Wow.
You're not gonna see bucks right now because they don't have their horns. They're
That's what I
shed,
was
so-
wondering.
I've just seen a couple, you're right, they're growing this time of year, springtime, so,
And
I
what
think
I was,
they'll be more noticeable end of the summer.
yeah, and I was also going to comment as someone who's lived here all my life, and that the reason why a lot of places don't allow bird feeders anymore, you were saying you will continue to allow those.
Yeah.
they attract bear and deer and other animals, like you were saying, deer eat them, but bear eat them too. And I had an incident a year or two ago where I had a baby bear who was coming to my house every day and night, and I had a cat.
Wow.
And it was a little frightening. I thought at first it was a lab that was eating the cat food because it looked like a big black dog. But then it stood up and looked me in the eye, and it was a baby bear who could look in my kitchen window. And he repeated to come back, and I thought, well, I'm not going to feed him. I know that's a bad idea. And if you encourage bear in Westlake, somebody's just going to get out the gun and shoot them. So I thought the nicest thing I could do to this baby bear is just let it go elsewhere.
Sure.
And then eventually I got concerned enough because I heard somebody talk about shooting him that I called local police. And they said with bear, they do a relocation plan. Somebody else told me, don't you believe that? They just destroy the bear. So I did not call. But this baby bear was making his rounds. And he was attracted, but I've taken all my bird feeders away because I don't want to attract baby bear or deer, because we do have a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I'm just worried where they've gone, and I just wanted to say the thing about bird feeders. In Florence, if you live in Green Trees, my Uncle Bob, who you all know or know about, he moved to Green Trees, and they had big signs up all over at Green Trees because that you could not have bird feeders. And a lot of places say that because they live across the street from the dump in Florence where they have a ton of bear. And they're a real problem for residents. So I was just going to put that in about that's the thing with bird feeders. They can attract bear, deer, and other animals that will eat bird food. And yeah, you'd think it's weird that they want bird food, but when they're hungry, yeah, they'll eat your sunflower seeds. So that was only, I just wanted to comment on the local wildlife, and we had a good discussion about other things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, item 9, executive session. We don't have anything for executive session. Item 10 is good of the order. Let's start with Larry. Larry, anything good of the order for the council?
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you. Melissa?
Nope.
Thank you. Chris?
Do not.
Rich?
I have an item that I think we should all take a little bit of interest in, and I kind of spoke with Ed briefly about it in text messages. I think that we should all make ourselves aware of the state potentially taking regulation on not allowing wells. It has to do with irrigation and wells for farming purposes and things of that nature, and they're looking at also basically not allowing wells to be drilled for housing and things of that nature. I don't know that we should not say something to the state, because the way it's written, or the way that I'm reading it, is they're not going to just strictly hold this to the east side of the state. If they're going to put it into play, it's going to be for the state as a whole. And so it'll basically stifle construction in the whole state. So if you get the opportunity, I really think that you should look up the regulations that the state's trying to put on well waters or water rights, and make yourselves aware of what's going on.
So there's a couple of bills. That one is that you emailed me, SB 1153. So yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, the one is triple the, this one's for water transfers and starts with irrigation, water, and farming, but there's another one that triples the fees for all, permits, applications, transfers, amendments. We have a couple of those ongoing. Adopted as an emergency exists, so it's going to be retroactive to July 1st if it passes. If it passes late, And then there was another one that didn't affect us. But so So I read that one, and I think if it directly affects Dune City, I think it should come, you know, from mayor and council if you wanted to. But if it's something you're concerned, I think everybody can go read them. And you can submit you can submit testimony online.
Yeah, yes.
And just fill in the box and say, I represent me, and I'm on surface water, or I have a well, and I don't like it. You know, just put something in. So I've commented as myself on a couple of them. You know, and I just said, I'm not taking anything in front of council, but I don't like this. So I just say, as me, I don't like it. And so I've commented on a few other bills, and there's one on ballot initiatives. Did you guys get a postcard about ballot initiatives? For lack of a better term, a special interest group mailed it out. And it said, call the representatives. It's a Senate joint resolution. So it was SJR something or other. So I looked it up. And it said, please tell your legislator you hate it. And I read it and I was like, I actually support it because it's gotten too easy to get a ballot initiative. And if you read your entire ballot last November, there was like 54 pages of stuff to read that went with ballot initiatives. And most folks, I mean, the average citizen doesn't pour through everything, you know, and so we have a lot of ill-informed choices, and sometimes I think it's on purpose. They just stick it out there and hope you're not paying attention, and good things fail and bad things pass because we're not all educated voters. And so I think it's gotten too easy because the percentage, it's like 10% of the last election, but you don't have to go where everybody voted, you know, so you can get enough votes, you can get enough people in Portland to have a statewide ballot initiative that affects us that we've never even had a say in the formulation. So and I wrote to all of them and said, I support it. We elect you to represent us, right? I mean, that's our job. It's really hard for us to have a ballot initiative. So sometimes we have to have the discussion and we got to make the decision. And I think that's what the legislators are supposed to do. So
I mean,
anyway,
the way
I commented
a lot of
me, but
the way a lot of this reads, I mean, it's really taken into effect that they want to eliminate like some of these dams and irrigation and things of that nature. Well, who's going to farm for this state? You know, and
oh yeah,
I mean, they're really taking control and really trying to take away from people being able to survive and live. I mean, to a point.
So the comments you sent me were written by a farmer. They were a little bit lopsided. You know, you got to do some more research, but their first challenge is overdrawn bases. There isn't any water to give out. It's overdrawn, and so they have priority rights. People, livestock, farmers, you know, they go in order, but at some point, there's a lot of farmers like, well, we just always did it this way. It's like you've been overdrawn in this aquifer for years. And we've had people that overuse, right? They get, their permit says they get 10 acre feet, and it turns out they've been taking 30 acre feet for the last 50 years. And so that's why they want to meter it. You know, there's a lot of them, they're unmetered, and they don't even know what their consumption is. So, but then there were a lot of comments about a big meter's really expensive. I don't want to do that. It's like, well, you're getting a free resource, you know, that's a public, right? The public owns it, not really the state. The state manages it on behalf of the public. But
I just think that we should all take the time to actually look into it and see what it's saying and see what we all think about it. Because, you know, if we all decide as a council that we should say something about it, then we would all be informed about it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And there's a lot of legislation going on right now.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah.
Way too much.
The first one with the fees hasn't even been introduced yet. Hasn't gotten a committee discussion. So there's a lot of stuff that just, they throw it on the list to see if anybody gets to it. It may die, and, you know, which means it'll come back next year and say we need to triple the fee still because they've got behind the 8 ball.
There's a lot of business tax that's coming up that's really going to affect a lot of businesses that they're really trying to take it to people. And the state's really going to cut their nose off to spite their face when they end up with a bunch of empty business fronts that are not paying nothing.
Yeah.
So it's a tough session right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Susan, anything else? All right, I don't have anything else. We'll adjourn. It is 8:08.
Thank you. I'm sorry again that I was a little late.
No problem. Oh, shoot, I need a motion to adjourn, sorry.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
8:08 and a half.